What's going on, guys, and welcome to another episode of Smash JT. Just got finished watching the E3 Ubisoft presentation, and I gotta tell you guys, it was bad. Very meh. Very similar to how I felt about the Microsoft presentation, except it was even worse than that. So bad that it was to the point of I was wondering why Ubisoft even attends E3 in the first place. All this money they're spending, all this hype they're generating, and then they go out there and just regurgitate the same exact games every single year. Gotta start off with the positives in this video because it wasn't all bad. Honestly, Watch Dogs looks incredible, being able to select party members and recruit them to your group, and they all have different special abilities, and going through and have permadeath? That was cool. Like, lots of stuff in this game stood out that I was like, you know, I want to play Watch Dogs Legion. Taking place in London, looks absolutely epic in the future, and all these different technologies you can use. He turns invisible, gets in a car, drives around like GTA in a second, and does a bunch of different stuff that's really cool. This game is definitely going to do well. That was part of the problem I had with this E3 presentation from Ubisoft, though, is all the games they were talking about were either sequels or prequels or something related to a game or DLC or additions. And holy crap, not only do we get another Just Dance game, but it is coming to the Wii. In 2019, there are still games being made for the Nintendo Wii. This game in itself defies all logic from the public. Yes, a ton of people have their Wiis, and some people apparently only have their Wiis to continually play Just Dance at house parties. Not me, not anybody I know, but clearly there's a market for it. They went into talking about the Uplay Plus, a Ubisoft streaming service on the PC that's gonna cost $15 a month to have access to Ubisoft games. Like, this is insane. $15 a month for a service of their AAA titles. On the surface, people might think, hey, that's not a bad deal. I want to play some of these top tier AAA titles that cost $60 at launch. Why don't I just pay $15 a month? But then every 4 months, you're spending $60. That is a lot of money. That is 3 brand new day one purchased AAA titles from Ubisoft a year. I don't think there's gonna be that many games coming from Ubisoft that you'd be willing to pay $60 a year from to be able to justify that price and having you save the money when it's a streaming service. You don't even physically own the games. And oh, by the way, it's PC only. This was a terrible look. The price was way too high, and honestly, the only saving grace from all of it was that they partnered with Google Stadia and that this service would be applicable to be played on Google Stadia's platform. So it's a streaming game service on a streaming game service platform. So you're going to be paying $15 a month, plus you're going to be needing Google Stadia membership. They didn't really talk about if it's going to work for free on Google Stadia or if you're going to need the Google Stadia Pro membership. Very confusing situation, all these things, lots of new technology and ways to get your money out of streaming services, and honestly, it's going to be a lot of confusion for the customers at the end of the day. But yes, as far as Uplay Plus is concerned, the only reason anybody would be interested in paying $15 a month for that is if it works for free on Google Stadia's free platform. And if that's the case, I could see a few people who want to have the flexibility on Google Stadia to be able to play strictly Ubisoft games. But even still, $15 a month, it's too high. It should have been, I was thinking it was going to be like $5 a month. And I was like, okay, 5, maybe $7 a month, I could see it. But you start approaching $15 a month for an exclusive game streaming service from one company and only allow people to play it from the PC or wherever they'll be playing the Google Stadia. It just screams of a little too niche, a little too exclusive. Not saying Ubisoft doesn't make games that are worthwhile, but there's too much competition for something like this to be successful on the landscape of video gaming today, especially with Microsoft announcing how their Game Pass is working with the $15 and having the Ultimate Game Pass on PC and Xbox and tons of Microsoft games and other companies in addition addition to that, for the same price of something that's just strictly Ubisoft, it just doesn't seem like it's a good match. Maybe $10 would have made more sense, but still very high for what you're getting. This is only for the extreme Ubisoft fans out there, the people that have to play every single brand new Ubisoft game the day they launch. Outside of those folks, I don't really see this thing selling to anybody. Something that wasn't a sequel or prequel or DLC that they talked about that looked fairly interesting was a roller skating game that may catch on. I want to see a little bit more of this one, but to be quite honest, that type of game wasn't really up my alley either. So for the most part, everything about this conference was niche to Ubisoft fans, people who play their games. They're going to continue to play Ubisoft games, and people that don't play Ubisoft games most likely aren't going to migrate to them as a service or to play any of their games, because unfortunately, for the most part, it feels like it's the same thing over and over again every single year. They ended the show with Assassin's Creed creator talking about how they're working on a new franchise called Gods and Monsters. Gave a gigantic Breath of the Wild vibe to it when I was watching it. The colors were really bright blue and green and outdoorsy, and it was a beautiful looking game. But it comes out at the beginning of 2020 and they didn't really show much gameplay footage from it. The trailer they showed was fantastic, but it was only a few seconds long, and I would have liked to see more from that game because it looks good. It's a new franchise. It's something that Ubisoft is taking a risk on, which, by the way, while watching this entire E3 Ubisoft presentation, I realized one thing. They regurgitate every single franchise, pump them out to death, and then once they die, they still make more of them and push them out to the public and try to sell a dead franchise to you. It's a bad look, and unfortunately, it's a repercussion of the video game industry environment that we live in today, where these big companies, publicly traded, have shareholders, have a lot of money they need to be making, and they're not able to take many risks, because if a risk fails, that's a gigantic loss of income. So from that perspective, I can see why Ubisoft keeps doing this, but ultimately, it makes them feel like just a company that continually rehashes the same ideas over and over and over again. How many Rainbow Sixes or Ghost Recons are at this point, even though Watch Dogs 3 looks amazing, how many of these titles can they keep pumping out almost annually? Assassin's Creed they took a little bit of a break on, and they're making Gods and Monsters with that team, which was excellent, but we all know Assassin's Creed's gonna come back too. So at what point do we just say to Ubisoft, stop making the same games all the time? It's really frustrating from the standpoint of a gamer. I feel like personally, many people might disagree with this, but if you've played one Assassin's Creed game, you've played them all. Yes, they have different storylines and different playabilities and mechanics and everything like that, but for me, the feeling I get every time I play an Assassin's Creed game is a fetch quest game. Go do this, go do that, go transfer to this place, and go do the same thing all over again. It's a formulaic approach to a video game that just doesn't vibe with me, and I know it's doing well, I know a lot of people love it, but at what point are we going to stop rehashing the same game over and over and over again? People might hear this and say, well, Nintendo does it with Mario, and to a certain extent you're right, but I would also say that Nintendo changes up Mario, they change up Zelda, they change up Metroid, they make it 2D, 3D, overhead perspective, behind the back, third person, first person, tons of different approaches to these games, so it doesn't feel like the same thing. Not to mention, normally, it's not annualized. They put them out when they are ready, which is something Ubisoft should take a lesson from, instead of just pumping as many big franchises as they have as often as possible out to the public. Take a step back and focus on some new franchises. Make things that look exciting to the end users that isn't the same thing that we've always seen over and over again. Ultimately, I'm saying that Ubisoft, while it wasn't a terrible presentation, definitely didn't knock my socks off, and no big surprises. Outside of the Gods and Monsters at the end of it, which didn't really show too much, it was a very meh overall conference. That's how I felt about Ubisoft. Let me know what you guys thought about this conference down in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, you stay smashing.
Rehashing.